Do you think there are more than two sexes?
I believe that there's a definition for intersex as well that I want to acknowledge. But sex is assigned at birth.
I'm just trying to understand. I'm thoroughly confused. So you're born, I'm talking about biology, male, female, and what else?
I believe that intersex is also acknowledged. But again, I'm not a doctor here. What I can
And
say
what does intersex mean?
is that there's a difference between sex and gender. And I think in these conversations, we're conflating the two.
Well, but I want to start with sex, okay? There's male, there's female. When a baby's born, before the baby has had time to even have a sense of self, there's male, female, and intersex. There's a third sex.
Senator John Kennedy grills Human Rights Campaign President Kelly Robinson in a heated congressional hearing that tackles the most controversial question in America today. How many genders are there? Watch as Kennedy systematically questions Robinson about biological sex, gender identity, and transgender athletes competing in women's sports. Robinson claims gender is expansive, with potentially infinite variations, while Kennedy argues this position defies biological reality and threatens fairness in athletics. The exchange covers intersex individuals, the difference between sex and gender, whether biological males have advantages over females in sports, parental rights, and the rights of transgender individuals. Robinson, a former NCAA swimmer herself, shares personal experiences while defending trans women's right to compete. Kennedy grows increasingly frustrated, telling Robinson she's losing credibility by refusing to acknowledge physical advantages. Let's dive into the main video.
Ms. Robinson, I want to follow up by trying to understand your answer to one of Senator Cruz's questions. And this is really a question, not a suggestion. Do I understand your position to be that there are two sexes, but there can be more than two genders?
I wouldn't even say two, and we've got Dr. Lopez here as well, but there's also the definition of intersex. I think that often in these conversations we're conflating sex and gender, and I do want to affirm here that trans women are women. That is their gender.
Okay, but I'm trying to understand. Do you make a distinction between sex and gender?
Yes, sir.
Okay, explain that. Do you think there are more than two sexes?
I believe that there's a definition for intersex as well that I want to acknowledge. But sex is assigned at birth.
I'm just trying to understand. I'm thoroughly confused. So you're born, I'm talking about biology, male, female, and what else?
I believe that intersex is also acknowledged. But again, I'm not a doctor here. What I can
say what does intersex mean?
Is that there's a difference between sex and gender. And I think in these conversations, we're conflating the two.
Well, but I want to start with sex, okay? There's male, there's female. When a baby's born, before the baby has had time to even have a sense of self, there's male, female, and intersex. There's a third sex.
I believe that is true, but I would defer to Dr. Lopez as I'm not a physician.
Okay. And how many genders are there?
I think the gender is expansive, and the definitions are always growing. Today I can tell you, I talk to young people that talk about non-binary as
more than five.
I think the gender is not a binary, is what I'm trying to say.
But are there more than five genders? I'm just trying to understand. Are there more than five genders?
Well, I think that there was a time where women wearing pants didn't feel like it was appropriate for their gender, and yet I'm wearing pants today. I think that there are ways that we express our gender that are expansive.
Are there more than five?
I wouldn't subject myself to naming how many genders there are, but what I can say is that gender is a reflection.
Number?
Excuse me?
There's an infinite number of genders?
I think depending on your culture, there are a lot of different genders that exist. And I can also say that it's a term that's evolving. If you look at young people today, they really don't lean into the binary of only woman and man. So I think that it's incumbent upon us not to legislate on this, but create space for them to explore what their identities are, what their gender identities are.
Let's get back to athletics. I think I understand what you're saying. There are three sexes: male, female, and intersex.
I believe that to be true, but again, I'm not a physician.
And
so
there are an infinite number of genders, because gender is a mental state.
Gender is about expression, and I think that there are a variety of ways that you can express your gender.
Okay, so there's infinite number. All right, let's go back to the biology. Male, female, boy, girl, okay? Biologically, do males have an advantage over females biologically in sports?
Again, I'm not a physician, and I can't speak to that.
What's your real world experience?
It depends. I mean, there are some people who are born male that I'm faster than if I were to sprint against them, and some that I'm not. Some males
So
that are
you don't
taller than
believe
some
that-
women,
you
and
don't
some that are
believe
shorter.
that a biological male has a physical advantage in sports over a biological female?
Not as a definitive statement.
Give me an example. Well, no, I don't think. How many female members of the NBA do you see?
Well, I can say that, there's been this news article about men that think that they could beat Serena Williams in tennis, right? That they think that they could actually score a point on her. And it's just not the case. She is stronger than
James,
that.
what's your experience, Ben? Male, female.
Both Serena and Venus lost to the 203rd ranked male tennis player, which they're phenoms for women. My experience, my husband, he swam at University of Kentucky as well. In terms of accolades and in terms of national ranking, I was a much better swimmer than him. He could kick my butt any day of the week without trying.
Okay. I just think, Ms. Robinson, I'm trying to understand where you're coming from. I think you lose a lot of credibility when you don't concede that a biological male has physical advantages over a biological female. I mean, I just think that's a proven fact, and you really hurt your credibility. I understand you want the world to be a better place. I do too, and I don't think people ought to be discriminated against because of an immutable characteristic. I don't. And I think that I think everybody ought to be free to be themselves. And what you do in your bedroom or what I do in my bedroom with a consenting adult is nobody's business. But if what I do in my bedroom with a consenting adult, if I decide I want to tell somebody's child about it, then other people have rights too. And I think parents have rights. And I think biological females have rights to be able to compete fairly in sport, in sports. So I really think you hurt your credibility when you refuse to acknowledge that biological males have an advantage over biological females. It kind of makes me wonder about all your testimony. Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Kennedy. I'm sorry.
As Senator Hirono prepares to ask her questions and the hearing continues, this exchange between Kennedy and Robinson stands as a masterclass in how to expose the logical contradictions at the heart of modern gender ideology. Kennedy's systematic dismantling of Robinson's position reveals what happens when ideology collides with observable reality. Throughout this exchange, Kennedy demonstrates remarkable patience and clarity. He doesn't approach Robinson with hostility or prejudice. Instead, he methodically walks through the logic, asking simple questions that any reasonable person should be able to answer. How many sexes are there? How many genders? Do biological males have physical advantages over biological females in sports? These aren't gotcha questions. They're fundamental inquiries that deserve straightforward answers. Robinson's inability or unwillingness to provide those answers speaks volumes. When pressed on whether biological males have advantages in sports, she deflects to Serena Williams and cultural relativity. When asked how many genders exist, she refuses to quantify, suggesting the number could be infinite and ever-changing. This isn't nuance, this is evasion. Kennedy's frustration is the frustration of millions of Americans watching this debate unfold. When Robinson admits that her own husband, despite her superior swimming credentials, could beat her any day of the week without trying, she inadvertently proves Kennedy's entire point. Biological sex matters. Physical differences between males and females are real, measurable, and significant, especially in athletic competition. the senator's closing statement cuts to the heart of why this matters beyond abstract philosophy. Kennedy explicitly affirms that people should be free to be themselves and that discrimination is wrong. This isn't about denying anyone's dignity or humanity. It's about recognizing that rights exist in tension with one another, and that society cannot simply pretend biological reality doesn't exist because it complicates someone's preferred narrative. When Kennedy says parents have rights and biological females have rights to fair competition, he's speaking for the silent majority who have been bullied into silence on this issue. Kennedy's point about what happens in the bedroom being nobody's business until it enters conversations with other people's children is particularly powerful. This distinction between private identity and public policy is where the rubber meets the road. Adults can identify however they wish, but when that identity framework is imposed on children in schools, when it erases the category of biological sex in women's sports, when it demands that everyone else participate in what many see as a denial of reality, then it becomes everyone's concern. Robinson's worldview requires society to accept that a trans woman is simply a woman, full stop, with no qualifications or distinctions. But this creates absurdities. It means biological males can compete against biological females, and we must pretend there's no advantage. It means anyone can identify into any gender category at any time, because gender is purely self-defined. It means the word woman loses any concrete meaning, becoming whatever anyone claims it to be.